Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date it is February 25th of 2021. Last week, Texas had its disastrous collapse of the Texas grid, and I'm sure it's been front page, on CNN. It was front page news. Still continues to be discussed, and the agency that controls the Texas grid, which I, in my opinion, think is probably a criminal enterprise. I hope that the investigation that takes place, looks into this situation. They're saying, and I don't believe anything they say, but it may be correct. They're saying that if they hadn't turned off the power to millions of people, which resulted in the death of, I'm not sure how many. I know I saw the story of, and a picture of a grandmother and her three children who died trying to stay warm. I saw the story, I think it was on CNN, maybe not, it's kind of hard to remember where he is, of a 10-year-old boy here in Texas who had never seen snow. And so he went out and played in the snow. Then he came in and got into bed. His, I think, 3.5-year-old brother was, in bed. And at, I think like 1:30 or 2:30 in the afternoon, they discovered that the 10-year-old boy was dead. And I could go on with, more cases like that. So, let's just say I'm mad as hell. Not going to take it anymore. Well, I'm going to take it because I don't have any choice. I live in Texas. Like I said, there should be an investigation of the agency that controls the power grid, and also there should be lawsuits. I'm thinking, I hope there will be, and if there are lawsuits, civil suits for damages or something like that, I hope they question everybody that they need to question. They get the depositions from them, they be under oath, and just see if there was a conspiracy, see if this was all set up and designed to enrich people, and see if they plotted together, and see if they perjure themselves. I don't know what the maximum penalty is for perjury in Texas, but they should all get the maximum penalty. This, because a lot of people died. A lot of people were inconvenienced. We went about I think over 3 days without electricity. We did everything we could, we had some firewood and everything, but we suffered a great deal. But some people died. People, lost their houses, water pipes broke, all types of things. So anyway, these people say, excuse me, a winter storm and a lengthy cold snap has crippled power facilities in Texas. caused about 2.3 million outages. This says as of Wednesday evening, so it'll be last week, leaving residents in the cold and dark for several days. The lack of power to about a quarter of the state has created a widespread emergency, with families huddled in homes or cars without heat, burst water pipes, failing water systems. We had to boil water here even after when the power came back on for a few days. We had to boil our water. The outages covered the area served by the electric reliability. Should they be able to use the name, the word reliability? Shouldn't that be false advertising or something? The Electric Reliability Council of Texas, from the counties bordering Mexico up to and touching Oklahoma, and from Houston in the east. I have I think a little bit of a cold from the last week with 49, 47 degrees in here. A lot colder in some places. I mean, for some people. Texas officials pointed the blame at the power company and called for investigations. U.S. Representative Marsh, passay, a Democrat who represents parts of Fort Worth and Dallas, said he learned from an industry executive that the power grid was just minutes away from failing on Monday before state officials initiated the emergency rolling outages. Now, at about 8 a.m. Monday, our electricity went off, and apparently the idea that the Texas grid people had was they would turn it off for 2, 3, or 4 hours or something to an area, and then they would switch to another area, and then they would switch to another area. That way nobody, you'd have to endure, I don't know what it was, 2, 3, 4 hours or whatever. You would have to endure that. Well, I'll just mention, us. We were without power for over 3 days. Because when they took down this part of the grid, they couldn't start up. They couldn't make the switch. It wouldn't switch anymore because of their design, software, incompetence, criminology. Who knows? Let's do an investigation. Let's find out. So they're saying now, well, they said pretty quick that if they hadn't shut everything down, well, if they hadn't pulled the plug, that the Texas grid would have collapsed. And I guess when things collapse, everything just blows up. They said that would be weeks and weeks and maybe months that there would be no electricity in Texas because the infrastructure would have been destroyed. Who designs a system like that for? Is there anything you would design a system like that for? No. What about backups? By the way, stories have come out that when they pulled the plug on, when they started turning off the electricity, they shut down electrical plants that were generating they turned the power off to them. And I believe it was some nuclear plants that generate electricity, I believe. And then it was some other oil, I think, or gas, I can't remember which. Of course, the grid people and Republican politicians in Texas are now saying the reason that happened was that the power, the windmills, wind turbines or whatever, they froze up, and that's because of the Democrats. That's because of the environmentalists. That's a lie. Now I know that's a lie. We know that's a lie. Back in, let's see here. Close that. Okay, wait, I saved. Cancel. Let me save this. I took out the. Oh, let me take this out too because this is old. What should I put in? I'll just put. Okay. Now here we go. Or is this it? Wait. There it is already. Let's go full screen here. Okay, this is in 2011 here in Fort Worth, Texas. There was some power outage, and they had like a mini. This was a warning for them, for the power grid people. Not as bad as what just happened, but this was a warning. They were told before this, and they were told after this, that they needed, that global warming was coming, or if you're a Republican, weather change. No, what is it that they refuse to say global warning. Climate change. Well, it's just climate change. It happens, That's their excuse. They had a warning here. They'd been warned before, but they had a warning, and this was it. And then after this happened, they were told, hey, you need to fix the power grid. You can tie into. There's three power grids in the United States. East Coast United States, West Coast United States, Texas. Why does Texas have its own? Because they don't want the federal government to mandate any things that they have to do, have any standards or whatever. And because Texas has figured out a way to make money off of people needing electricity. And I think that's a racket. And I don't think it should be worked that way. And, if it was up to me, I would just, no, not right now. No, I would just say take over the entire power grid from the companies that own it, all these various electrical companies that own it. Just take it over. You failed. You have a responsibility to the public. You lied about things, and so we just take over the entire thing, modernize it to meet the standards of the East Coast of the United States power grid and the West Coast part of the, power grid. Fix the system. The Texas be owned by the people of Texas. If it makes money, the money, taxes and stuff could go into, the general revenue or whatever, and people's taxes could be reduced. Texas actually doesn't have a state tax. But just do like Alaska does. They have a lot of oil and stuff up there, and every year the people of Alaska, the citizens, get a check for I don't know how much, X amount of money. Here, you're a stockholder, you're an owner. Here's do that here. Just instead of us having to pay hundreds of dollars for broken pipes, and we didn't have any byway here. People, well, they were an apartment complex, so the apartment across from us and upstairs on the second floor, those people, their pipes froze. But I guess, of course, this would be like communism or something, so we're not going to do that, not just in Texas, but we're not going to do it anywhere in the United States. We're not going to seize private property from business people. I'm not sure you're business people if you operate something in this way, that you know that people are going to die and that damage is going to be done. I'm not sure that's a business person. Isn't that a criminal? But anyway, this was a warning that they had in 2011. It's now 2021, 10 years later. They didn't modernize their system. They didn't do the things that they needed to do, that engineering and good business practices and everything. They just felt like, wow, this happened and probably won't happen for 5 or 10 years. And meanwhile, we can make major money. And if people back then, which they probably did, is, hey, let's modernize this and put in the protections to make sure things, the electric power plants don't freeze up and all that happens. And then the system will be much, people probably back then were saying in 2011, well, we kind of lucked out, but things are going to get worse. But not the business people. They're thinking, well, I'm invested in this power company and we've got these deals and whatever, and should we modernize? Well, I'm, however old I'm 70 years of age, and it'll be somebody else's problem. I'll be retired, and the bad weather may not come for 10 years or 15 or 20 years, maybe 25 years. It may not come. If it does, I'll be retired and in Cancun or Hawaii or something. Okay, well, here it was 10 years ago. Here we have snow again. Of course, the sun is finally out. I don't know if you can see that. But, well, let's see what we can see from the patio window. Let's see. Sun's out, sort of. Well, there's clouds, but the sun is breaking through occasionally. Getting little flurries of snow, but it doesn't amount to anything, except this is Fort Worth, Texas, and they have absolutely no idea what to do. I mean, all they do is just wait. They wait until it melts. By the way, the reason the apartment, and it's on the second floor. A few years later, we moved from that second floor apartment that you're seeing now. Well, not that one. I mean, to a downstairs, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and on the end of the building here. But right here, by the way, is the building that the apartment or whatever, where the water pipe broke, and the company had to come out and just finished up taking all the siding off and fixing the pipe and replacing it. By the way, this 2011, we just came from Florida, Miami, where we just spent 5 years in Miami, Florida. I think our stuff might have been. I saw some boxes. I think our stuff I already got here. Unfortunately, this is a little bit of snow, but it's on top of ice and snow. And the ice is pretty treacherous because they just haven't done anything about it. You know, if they would just, the snow and ice they got really would have been so easy to take care of. Now I can understand that the city doesn't have, you know, a lot of trucks and a lot of blades and a lot of sand and salt, but really more upset with, you know, why the people, private business people, why they haven't done anything. We're talking shopping malls, strip malls, all kinds of places. Nobody's bothered to do anything. They're just waiting for it to melt. So that's my complaint for today. Oh, let's see.
So I started out the hang up, and then they made contact, and it had been a domestic, but the subject involved left.
Today is February 4th, 2011.
If there's a 63 available, can you send them my way?
Okay. Where was I? Here's the Texas grid. This is from Texas Tribune, the newspaper. Why does Texas have its own power grid? Basically, Texas has its own grid to avoid dealing with, you guessed it, the feds. But grid independence has been violated a few times over the years, not even counting Mexico's help during the blackouts in 2011. That's the video you just saw. Now I think this is covered up, wait a minute, where is it? From the news recently, on the west part of Texas. Oh, this is it. Yeah, this is it. Because this is Texas here. It's marked, you know, it's Lubbock, whatever, Texas. These people decided, they're in Texas, they decided not to be part of the Texas grid. And so they joined the West United States grid. And of course with this power outage here, or with the power outage that we just had, they didn't lose electricity at all. They were getting their power from the, you know, Western United States power grid. I think we either need to move back to Florida or we need to move over to Lubbock. I can't live there because I can't even pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced correctly, but don't remember it right now. It says this story was originally published in 2011. Why does Texas have its own electrical grid? Texas secessionist inclinations have at least one modern outlet, the electric grid. There are 3 grids in the lower 48 states: the Eastern Interconnection and the Western Interconnection and Texas. The Texas grid is called the ERCOT, and it's run by an agency of the same name, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. It does not actually cover all of Texas. El Paso is on another grid and is the upper panhandle and chunk of East Texas. This presumably has to do with the history of various utility service territories. Okay. they're going to tell the history of it. So, grid information. Here's the people that I want to see sued, because if you do a civil suit, you can depose, get depositions from everybody, and then you can ask them questions, and if they lie, that's perjury, and then you can put them in prison. And I want to see them, if they lie, if they're lying about what they, then I want to see them get whatever the maximum penalty. Normally you wouldn't probably, but I would want to see them get the maximum penalty. If it's 20 years for perjury, maybe it would be 20 years or something for each time. So if the person says, 5 times, 5 different statements, run those sentences, consecutively, concurrently. I forget now. Brain is not working. It was froze last week, so anyway, this is the people who I want to see. There should be penalties for things, and especially in this case, where, let's see, how many people died? Do we know? I don't think we would actually know how many. Let's see, how many people. Texas Tribune, that's a newspaper here. Many Texans have died because of the winter storm. Just how many won't be known for weeks or months. Dozens of deaths have been tied to this weak storm, but experts say the death toll is likely far larger. As snow blanketed much of Texas on Sunday, an 11-year-old boy in Houston area gleefully played outside. Seeing the snow was the first for the boy, who came to the U.S. from Honduras 2 years ago with his mother, she told the Houston Chronicle. Less than 24 hours later, as temperatures plunged to near single digits and homes across the state lost power, the boy died. Earlier that same morning, a San Antonio man had left his house for a dialysis appointment, but he never arrived. His wife found him unresponsive nearly 2 hours later in the frigid weather. Local authorities said the man's death could have been from exposure to the cold. In Abilene, first responders found a 60-year-old man dead in his home on Wednesday. His wife, who was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment, said they hadn't had power for 3 days. Fire department said it felt as cold inside as outside. Why a predictable cold snap crippled the Texas power grid. Did I mention that these people who run the power grid actually ended up turning off power to places that were, they shut off homes and businesses and things to cut down on power usage. And it turns out that they shut off power to places that were generating electricity. They have some real geniuses, don't we, in charge of this system. Actually, we have geniuses in charge who know how to make money. Set up like, I don't know, like the stock market or something rather. They trade, okay, well, this place over here, they need electricity because they're not getting enough electricity. So the price of electricity, whatever it is per kilowatt, they need the electricity, so that price goes up 10%. We're raising that price up 10% for the electricity that we're sending over there. And then there's people who own options, or I don't know what they call it. I have trouble. I can't even balance my checkbook, But these other people, they know, and, they're sitting there. They're making money, and I don't think it should. Okay, well, maybe these people got the right idea. Why don't we set it up so people have to pay for air that they breathe? And then, of course, the air would always be blown, there'd always be air. Well, wait, maybe not. Pollution would cut down air, say, in El Paso. And so, if a wind came through and blew into El Paso and blew out, or whatever, we could charge for that air more money. Those people would have to pay on their utility bill. They would have to pay for the air. It probably wouldn't be as profitable as electricity, but we could do that. Why not? Hey, let's charge for sunlight. And we could have stockholders, and if somebody needs sunlight, this is a moneymaker. These electrical grid people, they got the right idea. Isn't that what the United States is about too? Profit, capitalism. As Texans cranked up their heaters early Monday to combat plunging temperatures, a record surge of electricity demand set off a disastrous chain reaction in the state's power grid. Wind turbines in the state's northern panhandle locked up. The reason that they locked up, by the way, was the power grid people had been told that they needed to winterize those turbines, but they decided not to do it. All they had to do was do whatever was necessary. I don't know whether it's insulation or what they would have to do, but if they would have winterized them, Texas, they don't want to be hooked into the United States' grid, West Coast or East Coast. The grid would be perfectly happy to take them in, provided they meet certain standards, provided that they modernize their equipment and winterize their turbines and this type of stuff, because it would be bad for the power grids, the other power grids, United States East and West, if a state with crappy hardware were to tie in and be using their electricity all the time and putting a strain on it and maybe causing problems. So if they were asked by Texas would say, or the power grid people would say, well, here's what you need to do. We got to you got to fix the turbines and other things. Texas, by the way, has a lot of energy, oil and natural gas and all types of things down here. So, you know, they could easily afford and easily fix the problems. And then the United States, East or West Coast, could be, actually everybody could be helping everybody, but, you know, Texas could be sending electricity to the East and West Coast power grids. But no, Texas wants to say, fuck the federal government. The federal government's not telling us what to do. We're not going to have any standards. They're not going to tell us to cut down on the amount of pollutants going into the air. That's, who does the federal government think they are? They're not going to make us, tell us we have to clean up water or we can't dump this or dump that. Fuck the federal government. And what happens? It's fuck the people who live, you know, here. But in Texas, do they care? No. Okay, let's see, I guess, wind turbines in the state's northern panhandle locked up. Natural gas locked up because, by way that the cold, and because the electrical grid people here in Texas refused to winterize them. Natural gas plants shut down when frozen pipes and components shut off the fuel flow. Well, it sounds like they needed to have some people come in and winterize those places. Southern Texas nuclear reactor went dark after a 5-foot section of uninsulated pipe froze up. Well, it's just a nuclear power plant. I mean, you know, it just needs water for cooling the uranium. I mean, what could happen? I mean, what could happen if it melted down? Yeah, it doesn't seem important to keep those places up to standards, does it? Yeah. What could happen? Power outages quickly spread statewide, leaving millions shivering in their homes for days with deadly consequences. It could have been far worse. Before dawn on Monday, the state's grid operator was seconds and minutes away from an uncontrolled blackout for its 26 million customers, its CEO said. I hope they get the CEO under oath and see whether that's true or not. It may be true, but I also want to know all the conversations that these people had with each other, and if any of them lie, I want to see them go to prison. Monday was one of the state's coldest days in more than a century. Wow, more than a century. There's no need to make any changes or fixes now. It will probably be another 100 years. They can make a lot of money. There's some risk involved, but a 10-year-old boy, yeah, he probably got hit by a car. Grandma and her 3 grandchildren, you know, they died, but, I mean, Grandma was kind of old. She was going to die anyway. And, right? You know what would be neat if there was some type of test you could do on people to see if they had any feeling for people, you know, some type of a Star Trek, you know, the Star Trek medical thing where they scan you and then fix whatever's wrong with you, you know. What if there was some type of a thing they could just scan? Okay, this person doesn't care about people at all. So, this person should not be a doctor or a nurse or somebody in charge of the power grid or in charge of a nuclear power plant or a human being. A fundamental flaw in the freewheeling Texas electric market left millions powerless and freezing in the dark this week during a historic cold snap. Yeah, tell us about it. I pay for a lot of stuff, and I have from the very beginning, before there was a World Wide Web. And I know people have to make money, but there's so many news sites, New York Times and Wall Street Journal and things like that, where you go. Well, I think the problem is you see something on, Google, and you click on it, and then you go there, and then you get or somebody sends you a link. Somebody knows you're interested in somebody sends you a link, and then you click on it, and they want you to, subscribe. Maybe Google should have a thing that, do you want to be sent someplace where you're going to be asked for money for the news story or something? I don't know. What do I know? I think that's probably it. What do you think? I think you probably agree with me. You probably wouldn't agree with me like nationalizing the electric company, It's like, the pharmaceutical companies, they make massive amounts of money, unbelievable amounts of money. But they say, well, we have to develop new things, and that costs a lot of money. I don't know if also, like the pharmaceutical companies, I'll bet you that 80% of the money that in the United States, that 80% of the money that pharmaceutical companies get comes from the medications that are being bought by hospitals and places like that, which is paid for, well, some of it is paid for by people's private insurance companies, but mostly paid for by Medicare and by government, because I worked 30 years hospital security. One hospital that I worked at, Trinity Lutheran Hospital, they had to put a notice out to the employees. You may not get paid this time. You'll get your money, but you may not get a paycheck this time, because Medicaid or Medicare, for some reason, I can't remember what the reason was, but they weren't going to be able to send the check to the hospital. Of course, I'm sure they didn't send a check. I'm sure it was a direct deposit, but you get the idea. And then the hospital put a notice out and said, okay, well, we went to our bank and we're taking a short-term loan for a week or a few days, and so we will have the money. And then when the check comes in from Medicare and Medicaid, then we'll pay off the short term, so the hospital also, there are rules and regulations and things at hospital. I worked at a small hospital, and a lady came in I mean, she didn't come in by ambulance or anything. She drove over to the hospital, and she came in, and I happened to just be in the area, and the ER clerk, the nurses checked when the lady came in, what's your problem? And I forget what the problem was. It wasn't, gushing blood, and it wasn't breathing difficulty, and it wasn't chest pain, If that would be the case, the patient would be put on the cart, taken care of, and paperwork would have been filled out, later and stuff. But the lady was okay, and she walked over to the ER clerk and sat down, and the lady said, my insurance, let's say Blue Cross Blue Shield. The lady says, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. Does the hospital take here, Blue Cross Blue Shield? And the ER clerk said, well, we'll be happy to see you here, but the hospital doesn't take Blue Cross Blue Shield. Our sister hospital, St. Joseph Hospital, they do take. She said, I used to work over there, and I know that they take Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the lady said, oh, thanks a lot. I want to go where my, so I don't have, And the ER clerk said, okay, but, we will see you here if you want to be seen. Oh, no, I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much, And she left and went over to St. Joe Hospital. I think it was St. Joe Hospital. What was funny, I forget, is that other hospital was part of our grid, hospital grid, part of the corporation, Health Midwest or whatever it was. I don't think it was St. Joe, but it was. Well, when this lady went over there, apparently, she went, same thing, came in the door, how are you, oh, I'm fine, whatever, sat down, and then she said, they said, what type of insurance do you have? I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I went to, Research Belton Hospital, and I asked them, and they said they didn't take Blue Cross Blue Shield, but they would see me. But they said that the lady there said that she had worked over here, and she knew that you all took, and they said, yeah, we take it. Filled out the form, and then somebody, I don't know whether it was somebody there, whether it was a nurse or who it was, maybe the lady told the same story over there. Oh, I'm so grateful. Maybe she said, I'm so grateful that they told me that you took, what they didn't take, That hospital reported that to the federal government. And forget who it would be, they showed up. They came to, our hospital, the Research Belton Hospital, was actually like part of, in order to get the hospital to be allowed to be built in this small area, small town. Research Medical Center, who had 550 beds, agreed to take 50 beds out, do away with 50 beds, and those 50 beds would go to the Research Belton Hospital. And so that made it part of Research Medical Center. So the federal government comes in and does their investigation and says, okay, this is a violation of such and such, and this is your first warning, and here's what you have to do. You have to give all of your employees 1 day of in-service training on what our rules are, that you can't turn anybody away, and that you have to agree to treat everybody, and whatever the rules are. And if you have if this happens again, we will not, now they can't shut you down, but what they would do is say, no federal money will come to you. No, if somebody comes in and they have Medicare, we won't pay. The hospital will not get any Medicare money. You won't get any Medicaid money, federal government money, which would kill the hospital. They would have to shut down. 70, 80%, they wouldn't have the money coming in. They wouldn't be able to pay for electricity. They, it was, and so anyway, the employees had to go through the training. What was worrisome to the Research Medical Center, the 550 bed hospital, was that was a strike against it also. So if something happened like that, a violation, that would be a strike against the main hospital also. Our little hospital had 50 beds, and they were only using 25 of them, and very few employees. And the main hospital had thousands and thousands of employees, and so the main hospital was like, oh crap. So how did I get on that subject? I don't know. Thank you anyway for watching. If you have any comments, leave them below.